Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this month's CoolCare Masterclass, where we'll be looking at managing your rota for Christmas on CoolCare with the festive period coming up soon. It's good to know how to manage your rotas and keep things up to date with changes we might have that we need to do. As always, to remind you, CoolCare is here to make operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable on there. And today we'll be seeing how to do that via our rotas. On today's masterclass, if you do have any questions or anything, you will be able to ask them. A member of our team is on hand to answer any questions you might have. Just using the Q&A button on Zoom, you should be able to find that. And then ask any questions you've got, and they'll be able to answer them. And you'll be able to see those answers as they go. So anything you think of at all, don't be afraid to ask, and we will have some time at the end of the session today as well for you to ask any other questions once we're finished. So let's see. Today we'll be looking at finding cover for our shifts on our rotas, either both internally and through agency staff on there, assigning temporary cover to potential shift patterns you may have on your rotas on there, where people are off on holiday, for example, on that. We'll see how to swap shifts around for staff members, as well as split them up if we need to have two people doing the same shift on there, and even adding in additional shifts while we might need extra cover in the home as well. So I'm going to swap over to my demo system and we'll get things underway. All right. Give me one moment to get logged in. And if I swap things over, there we are. Right. So what we're going to do today, as I say, is showing you how to make some short-term changes to your live rota on CoolCare. The idea being this is all just short-term stuff that we need to change for a certain, period, just for certain few days on there, such as example around the Christmas period. So we'll be doing all of that under our staff section and under the live rota under there. As you might be aware, under CoolCare, there's also the care home section with the rota setup. We're not going to be worrying about changing that today because we're all doing short-term stuff. The rota setup is more for long-term stuff on there, so we don't even need to touch that. It's all to do with our short-term changes on our live rota. So if I go to my staff rota on here, whenever you open this rota, it will take you to today's date and show you what's going on in all your rota on there right now. Looking at it from today, my rota is all right at the moment, but we're not worried about how it is right now. We're going to be planning ahead and looking at Christmas time. So we can change our dates up using the little options in the top left corner where it's got today's date on there. If I click on that, we can change the dates. So the calendar there, I can go as far ahead as I want with that. So I'm going to go ahead to the 23rd of December on there so we can look at the week of Christmas. And we can see straight away on here, I've got a few things that we may need to address. So, excuse me. Right away, I can see I've got a few shifts that need filling in where I've got something unassigned. Most of my shifts are filled in with staff members, as you can see, the blue ones on here telling me they're all filled in with staff and they're all fine. But we do have some white ones here where someone is not assigned to them. In this case, it could be because of a holiday or just that we haven't found cover for those shifts yet. Luckily, there's a couple of ways we can fill these in to get these shifts covered and keep things running smoothly. So, for example, on this first shift here, Christmas Eve, the 24th, on there, they need a shift filled in on the afternoon. I've had a whip around my staff members and asked who can do this shift, and luckily I found someone to do it. So I can click on that shift there, and I've got the option to add my staff to it. So I can see some basic details of my staff members on here, such as their name, if this is their main role. So this is a care assistant shift that I'm filling in on here. So these are all care assistants within my home on here. If they were pool staff from another home in my company, I'd be able to see the tick on that pool position box there. And if they're bank staff, I can see a little tick on that box as well there. So we can get a breakdown of which staff members are available for this. And if they're already assigned to another shift, you can see they're grayed out down the bottom. So we can't put people on two shifts on the same day with that. And if they had anything else going on, such as a holiday, absence, or training, anything like that, that would pop up in our other events as well. Like I say, I've had an ask around my stuff and found someone to do it, so I'm just going to pop Sean on this shift for the afternoon. As soon as I click their name, it will pop them onto that shift on that day, as you can see, and that will see they've been assigned to that shift, and they're all good. So we found one gap filled in already. Our next shift, however, on Boxing Day, the 26th now, as you can see, the morning shift on that. I haven't been able to find a regular staff member. Nobody's come forward and said they can do it yet. So just to plan ahead, I'm going to add in that shift as agency instead. I'm going to say bring some agency on that shift just to do it instead of my regular staff members. So if I need to do that, we start the same way. We click on the shift to open it up, and we can see everyone that's available for it, such as if they're already assigned to the shifts, or there we can see somebody's on holiday that day as well. But if we need to assign this to agency staff rather than my regular staff members, you can see this button in the top right corner, the brown one there that says covered by agency. I can then assign this shift onto an agency staff member and let them deal with it instead. So if I click that, brings up this box, assign this shift to agency. And there's a couple things we need to just fill in to get the information on there. Firstly, the name of the agency. And these will be customized on your system. These are lookups in CoolCare that you guys can customize and have different agencies you would use on there. So we'll go with roundabouts, for example. And then your reason for using the agency. Again, this is a lookup that can be customized on CoolCare, so you may see different options on yours compared to mine, but it's just different reasons for using agency that they might have. And we're going to say it's going to be temporary cover for the moment because we haven't found someone to fill in that shift. If you know the particular person who's coming for the agency, you can type their name in there, but if not, we can leave it empty and not assign that for now. You could even say if they're covering for someone who'd be off sick or on a holiday, who would be doing that shift originally on there. In this case, I'm not going to fill that in because again, we didn't have anyone to do it in the first place. And we can add in any additional notes we want, just extra information regarding that shift if we need it. But the main thing is, once we've got some info filled in there, we can save that shift and it will mark it as assigned to agency. And you can easily spot where agency is being used as well, as you can tell. There, they count as brown compared to blue, so they usually is able to spot where agency is being used. As well as that will also actually create an entry in your agency ledger on the left-hand side there. And that's just essentially a separate section on CoolCare where it keeps track of all the different shifts that are done by agency. And so certain people can go in there, check those shifts, and even, fill out any further details they might have for them on there through that. But yes, adding that shift on the Rota here then follows that through to the agency ledger on there. But there's also one other way we can assign cover to shifts if we need to. For example, let's say I've got these 3 shifts on a holiday here that David cannot do because he's on holiday those days. But if we want to assign someone to all 3 of those shifts in one go, we can do that through the Rota on here. Now you could just get to each shift individually, but like I say, if you've got one person that's going to be doing all those shifts to cover them all, they said they can do them. We can click instead in the staff column here where it says David's name at the moment. I click on that, brings up this box, tell me this shift pattern for a care assistant is assigned to David Winston, so he's going to keep doing that shift pattern in the long run. But if I want to assign some cover stats just in the short term while he's on holiday, I can click this button in the top corner, it says covered. And if I click that, this is where we can assign temporary cover to this shift pattern. So it says there, it will assign a chosen staff member to the unassigned shifts as long as they're available to work. As long as they've not got another shift conflicting with it or anything else like a holiday, absence, etc. in there. So all we need to do is choose the dates they need to cover. So in this case, it's just from the 25th, Christmas Day, up to the 27th that David has off. And then it brings up a list of all my staff that will be able to do this on here. So these are just all my carers in my home I can choose from. We'll go with Zoe down the bottom there. And once I save that, it will check to make sure she's not got anything else going on those days, which she shouldn't on mine. And if she's available, put her in all 3 of those shifts, as you can see. So all 3 of those just filled in one go, rather than having to go through each shift individually and pick them one by one. You can just pick the entire date range you want covering, and as long as that person's available, they can put them in all those shifts in one go. So that's the idea. With assigning your staff on there, you can either go through one by one, or like I say, if it's someone off for a longer date range, it might just be a few days, it might be a couple of weeks that they're taking off, for example, on there. You can assign temporary cover to that shift pattern if it's the same person doing all of them as well with that. But of course, the slide rotor isn't just for assigning our staff on there. We can keep it up to date with any small changes we've got. So if we need to move things around, obviously, like I say, this is what it might be ideally for the moment. But of course, things are going to change with our rotors, and we need to keep up to date with those changes as we go. So for example, we can change who's assigned to a shift. So let's say this agency shift I've got in here, actually, one of my staff members has now got back to me and said they can do that shift now, so we don't need the agency in there anymore. We can just click on that shift, and we get a few options, as you can see. The first one we want, change staff, is where we can just change the person who is assigned onto that single shift. So if I click on it from there, it takes us back to this box here where it just gives us a list of all the staff that are able to do this, and we can pick the person who we want to do it. So it might be that, again, one of my bank staff, let's say Tara, for example, is going to do this shift instead. If I click on her name there, it will just pop her into that shift and then remove the agency from there as well with that. In that case as well, because it's a unique agency shift, it will also mark it as cancelled in our agency ledger that I mentioned before. When you add them on the shift, it puts them in that, but then it will cancel it in the agency ledger as well once that has been covered by someone else. It keeps it as a record to say it was originally being done, but just says it's been cancelled because someone else is covering it now instead of the agency. So we can easily change who's assigned to a shift, just going through one by one and updating things as we need to. But what if two people have agreed to swap their shifts around? Yes, we could just go in and change them individually, or we can use our next option, to swap shifts. So let's say my two seniors here have agreed to swap their shifts on the Monday and the Tuesday, Amanda and Linda. If I click on the first shift I want to swap, I'll go with Amanda's there. We then get this purple button here, swap shift. And this is where two people are swapping their shifts around just to say they're doing each other's on there. So it gives us the shift details of our first shift we're swapping on the left-hand side, the 23rd that I've clicked on. Then we just need to find what other shift they'll be swapping with. In this case, it's one on the 24th. And in my case here, there's only one shift they'd be able to swap with, the other senior carer on there. If they had a lot, they could even do it by the staff member's name. If we search for Linda on there, we can see all of Linda's shifts, what she's got upcoming, and choose which one they'll be swapping with from there as well. You can see they're the top of the list. You can just say use both of them as well. So if you want to narrow it down, we can find it through that. But you then select the shift to swap them with, it'll highlight them for you. And then you click the swap shift button, and that just switches their two around. So you can see now, Linda's in Amanda's shift, Amanda's in Linda's. It won't swap the actual position of the shift, it would just be the names of the person in them with that. So we can easily see kind of who was originally doing the shift based on the shift pattern on the left-hand side, but we can see that someone else is covering it in their stead on there, in this case, because they've swapped around. Yeah. Swapping shifts is mostly useful when, say, if you're using kind of repeating shift patterns on CoolCare, but just wherever you need to swap two people around, you can do using that. So you don't have to worry about finding both shifts. As long as you've got one, you can find the other and swap them easily enough from there. So that's the thing, swapping our shifts around easily enough on there. Our next option we've got after that is to unassign staff. So let's say someone's come back to me and said, actually, they can't do a shift on this day anymore, and we might need to find someone else to do it instead, but we don't have someone right away to do it now. We can click on a shift. Let's go with this one on the Friday, for example. And you can see the orange button there, unassigned staff. And that's just going to remove that person from that shift, saying they can no longer do it on that day, and we've got a gap that needs filling in. So if I click unassigned, there, it just removes Tara from our shift and says she's no longer doing that shift on that day. And that could be for any reason. It's just said, they can't do it in this case. But also, if they've got stuff like holidays, absences, you can put those on your calendar, which we'll see next time on our next webinar, when it will then take them off the rota from here automatically. But this is just a manual change. If you need to just remove someone from a shift, they said they can't do it, we can see we've got a gap there that we might need to fill in at a later date. And it would just look like any of a shift, that gap. If I click into it, it takes us back to this box here where we can choose who will be covering it instead. But that might be for me to worry about another day on there. Finally, we've also got the option to delete shifts. So again, if I click on a shift, there's the red button there to delete it. And you might be thinking to yourself, why do I even need to delete a shift? Why do I want to remove one on there? Well, it could be for a number of reasons. It might be that you need to split a shift, for example. Let's say I've got a shift on here that a staff member can still do part of it, but not the entire thing. So let's take Katie's shift here on Christmas Day, the 25th. She can no longer do the full shift on that day. She can only do up to noon. So we need to split that shift so we can say she's doing the first half and then add in an additional shift to then say who will be doing the second half. So if I click on that shift there, we have the red button, as I say, delete shift. Click on that. And it tells me there, just to confirm, are you sure you want to delete this shift? It tells me all the details of it. Is that the right one? As it says there, the staff member assigned to it will be unassigned. They'll be taken off the shift on that. But the big thing is it doesn't affect the rolling shift pattern. So we're not upsetting anything in the long run. It's just this one shift on the one day we're deleting rather than anything repeating on there. So if I click delete shift, it removes Katie's shift from there. So we've now deleted that shift. And now we just need to replace it. So as I say, Katie can still do the first half of that shift up until noon. So we're going to put that in on Katie's row there. If I click back in that empty space, we can add in an additional shift. And this is just a brand new shift that we're adding in to replace the one we deleted. And it can be either one of your regular shift times that you've got set up in the background, set up via your home setup, or it can be an ad hoc shift. If it's something out of the ordinary, we can add it in as an ad hoc on here to say what it is. In this case, so it's going to be just her doing the morning from 8 o'clock up until 12 o'clock noon. And so we add that shift in, pops it in on there as you can see. And then we just need to assign Katie back onto it by clicking onto the shift and choosing who we want, in this case, Katie. So she said she can do up until 12 noon, so that's added it in on there. But we still need to find someone to do the rest of the shift up until, 8 p.m. So I'm going to add in just under my regular shifts here. I've got a little bit of extra space in case I need it to add in an additional shift on a day. So I'm going to click in that blank space that I've got underneath, and then we can add in a brand new shift. So in this case, again, we're just going to do it as another ad hoc shift on here. And what day period we want it for, we'll say it's for the afternoon in this case, from 12 noon up until the end of the shift, 8 p.m. And if I add that shift in there, it pops it in underneath, as you can see. And then, as before, it just works like any other shift we've got available to assign. We can click on it there and choose who we want to do it. Again, it might be we choose a regular staff member, or we might need to assign it to agency on there with that. And I'm going to say, actually, yeah, we're going to get an agency staff in for the afternoon rather than worry about bothering my regular staff on Christmas Day. So we're going to pop in who we want to on there. And again, fill out all the details of the agency shift as we need to. So if I save that in there, the staff they're covering for, in this case we can choose, is actually, it was Katie, wasn't it? Afternoon of split shift. We can say in there as well, pop in some notes. So if I then save that, again, pops it in as agency, as we can see. Now, as I've actually been changing some stuff around on those days, that is going to slightly change things on here. As you can see up at the top here, this little color coding bit has gone all sorts of colors. So to explain this, this is our staff budget, which is this is originally set when you do your rota setup on CoolCare, saying how many you would need on a given day. And this is comparing back to that to see if we've got the right amount of staff in there, over or under in that. In this case here, because I've changed around some shift times and updated a few things, it's ever so showing slightly differently. So you can see my budget split into afternoon, day, and morning. And so where I deleted that day shift that was originally the full day for Katie, it's now saying I've got one less shift in there because I do technically. It's now been split into an afternoon and a morning shift, which is why they're showing as over as well. So the red means it's under budget, the blue means it's over budget, but because it kind of balanced themselves out due to what I've done with the splitting of the shifts, we know that's still fine. It's just to let you know that there might be a difference from what was originally planned on your initial rota, which is bound to happen, of course, as we're changing things around at this time of the year in there. But I say, it's just keeping an eye on things, make sure that does still add up and make sense, and make sure you still do have the right amount of staff in there. We might even need extra staff on a day in there as well, which we can do through adding in our new shifts. Let's say I need an extra person in to help on Boxing Day, for example. We can again just click in those empty spaces I've got down at the bottom, and we can add in additional shifts. Again, this could be a regular shift from our times in the background. I'm going to say we're going to want in, we'll do one of these half-day shifts, 10 while 4 in there, for example. And let's add that shift in, and it pops it in just like that. And then, as before, we can choose who we want to do it. And I've said one of my staff has agreed to do this already, so I'm just going to pop in Ben under that, and it pops him in on that shift. And as you can see up the top, it's just gone blue under my day parts to say 6 out of 5 shifts because we've added in an extra one, 66 hours when we originally planned in for 60 on there. So as you make any changes to your rota, it will all update on that budget bit just to be aware that things are different and varying from our initial perfect rota, but that's fine. These things are bound to happen as we do change our rotas on there. But you can always keep an eye on it and make sure it does all make sense if you need to. Yes, that is, I think, kind of the changes we can make on our rota there. If, just to be aware, as I mentioned, I've got these extra rows underneath my regular rota just to make sure I've got initial space to add in some additional shifts if I need them. If you guys don't have those, you can add in extra lines to your rota via the rota setup page under your care home section, and then just add them in as empty rows, and then you'll have some additional space on your regular rota here to add in those extra shifts wherever you need them. I can click onto any of these empty spaces and add them in wherever I would need on that. And remember, You've got your four options there for changing things around and keeping it up to date with those changes to your staffing. Change staff if you just need to change who's on an initial shift. Swap shift if you need to swap two people around. Usually it's part of the shift patterns on there. Unassigned staff if we need to take someone out of a shift, said they can't do it for whatever reason. And delete shift if we need to remove a shift to change the timings of it, if we need to split a shift, etc. All that kind of thing, we can delete a shift as much as we need to on there. But yeah, the big thing with these options is it's all short-term stuff, as I keep mentioning on there. Never going to upset anything on your rota in the long run. It's all about stuff that's happening on certain dates on, looking at as on just this 1 week rather than anything continuing on from there. That's so just a couple of things to show you before we do finish up for today. So go back to my presentation. So as you might be aware, our CoolCare training team is always able to help you with the continuous professional development of your staff. Whether in charge of financing, payroll, rota management, anything you can think of, you can work with our product specialists, myself and other trainers available online or in person on there. And if you're not aware, you might be entitled to some free training as well. Every customer may have at least two 30-minute free of charge training sessions available to use, and you can contact our training team in order to check your entitlements and book something in. You can email us training@coolcare.co.uk, or you can phone ours as well, 0113 385 3853. Anything you think of, I think we'd be able to do some training with that if you need it. So yes, thank you all for coming to today's training, this session. Next month's will actually be in a few weeks' time. We're going to be doing next month's webinar a little bit earlier, but it's going to be about managing your calendar for Christmas. So that'll be where we're looking at stuff like holidays, absences, adding all of that in and seeing how it affects your system and how you can keep on top of all of that as well. But thank you all for attending and coming today. We will leave the session open for a little bit longer, just in case you've got any other questions. You can ask us on the Q&A on Zoom, and we'll leave that open for any questions people may have. So thank you all for coming and have a nice day.